Well, first of all, Don was a great guy. We spent a lot of time together. We worked together on APD. He was a community liaison, crime prevention sort of individual. We worked together. We socialized together. We went to functions together. But well, first of all, he as you've mentioned, he was a great Lobo.
Yeah.
He was a great Dallas Cowboy, but most importantly, he was even a greater New Mexican. He loved the state of New Mexico with respect to the issues in Dallas back in the 60s. It was a segregated city.
Yeah.
And he used to tell me stories about raising his children, working for the Cowboys.
You know, Don Perkins came to UNM to play for the Lobos, left Iowa and came here, and he's like, okay, I'm not going back to Iowa. And so that's how we met him. He fell in love with Albuquerque, and Albuquerque fell in love with him. And then when he went on to become a Dallas Cowboy, it was like, whoa, he's now famous. We know somebody who is famous. And he loved Albuquerque, so even after he stopped playing for Dallas, he came back. And when he was not in season, he lived in Albuquerque. So Albuquerque was his home, and he gave so much to Albuquerque, to our citizens, to our community. And it didn't matter what your nationality was. Don loved everybody. And so it's our honor to be able to say we want to give back to somebody who left a lasting impression here in Albuquerque.
After Don died, a number of us, were talking. We need to do something for Don. So I went to the mayor, and the mayor's got a commitment to bring names to places. And he said, yeah, let's do something. And we explored a number of different areas. We looked at naming a road for him, and there are lots of complications there. And then one day I was having coffee with the planning director at the city, and we just thought, where's a street that we don't have problems with addresses? And I thought of that little stretch of Dartmouth, I think it is, right there. And I said, there's nothing on there. That then led to, well, why don't we look at the plot, naming the little triangle there, the Don Perkins Plaza. And so we took that to the mayor. He was all on board with that, and we moved forward with from that point on. And the sign went up for Don Perkins Way last year, and we had the dedication for the plaza. So it was really, I think, a great place, and for a number of reasons. One, its proximity to the university.
Yeah.
I mean, that was his roots. And then the other thing, the fact that it's in the Nob Hill University area. As a matter of fact, at the intersection, where Nob Hill runs into the university area. And I think, all of that I think is important. And I think it really was a good idea to do that there.
So Don Perkins and my father were good friends. And so that's how I came about to know him and the family. I was quite young when he was here playing for the Lobos and then for the Cowboys.
He worked for Bruce King, I think, for a while.
Okay.
He came on APD. That's where we first met, decades ago.
Okay.
And he was a community relations sort of guy.
Right.
Everyone knew him.
Right.
And he was so approachable and so representative of the positive aspects of the police department, police work, police officers, that he was a great way to reach the community, and he enjoyed it. As I say, he was articulate, he was forthcoming, he was engaging, and just a great guy.
That's kind of my background. I was a friend of Don's. I knew Don, had worked with him on a number of occasions, worked primarily back in the 90s when I was city attorney. and he was, you know, in 2000s, and he was just such a valuable resource for the city. You know, when issues would pop up, you know, with community relations between the department and various aspects of the community, he was always there. He was a person you could count on and rely on, and he was so good at talking to people, and he was so good at relating to people and listening to people, because so many times what needs to be done is for a person to listen as opposed to talk. And I think he, you know, that function that he did for the department, I think was invaluable.
And again, his career is not defined by football. As he would tell you, football was a segment of his life. It did not define me. He went on to be a broadcaster. I think he did CBS Sports, Sunday football. He was a local sports announcer here. And he was even a truck driver.
Yeah, and I saw that he wanted to be a long haul truck driver.
He was a long haul truck driver. Yeah. And no, he did not want to be defined as a football player.
Yeah.
He was a Renaissance man. He could do it all. And I think if you defined him as just a football player, he would take offense to that. Furthermore, you go to his house, there was nothing to indicate his trophies, banners, or otherwise. He'd given that stuff away. I probably have some of that stuff laying around the house. There was nothing in the house there that would identify that he ever played football.
His work in the community, he was so passionate about the safety of the underserved and the under-resourced here. And he didn't like the fact that too often they were not treated properly. So his goal was to make sure he was working within the system to make sure we receive proper treatment.
And talking with Don, he had this velvety, beautiful voice that would just, you know, I mean, you'd just be mesmerized by the tone and the tenor. I mean, oh man.
Public safety was very important to him, but I knew them on a personal level. So I knew him and his family, and we would go on vacations together. So we would go down to the lake and go water skiing and those kinds of things. We went to church together. So I knew them on a completely different level than probably a lot of other people.
The other thing that always struck me was and this is more later on in time. I lived in the Nob Hill University area as Don did, and you could just see he was a Nob Hill resident. He walked everywhere. He occasionally drive somewhere, but in the university and Nob Hill area, he was a typical urban kind of person. And you'd see him out walking, you'd see him walking to the frontier.
An hour plus, an hour and a half of monologue on stage where he was playing Frederick Douglass. It was amazing. Of monologue.
Yeah.
It was a one-person
performance.
play, one-person performance. We did it. I remember I went with him up north. We did it here in Albuquerque a few times, and I mean, he was just brilliant in that respect.
I think one of the things that that Don contributed to Albuquerque was a real commitment to the diversity of Albuquerque, whether it was a matter of race, whether it was a matter of class. He could relate to people across the board. And he was reflective of the fact of how diverse our community really is, and how we are able to talk to one another where in many areas that is impossible. Not that we don't have our problems and not that we don't have our issues, but Don was reflective of that. And I think his memory will help us keep that in mind as we face some challenges over the next few years.
So he would tell me the stories about going to find an apartment a house, he would show up. Well, it's been rented. It's been rented, and that sort of stuff. And I recall he was telling me one season they got through playing the New York Giants in New York, and they flew back to Dallas. They landed in Dallas, and at the airport, his wife Virginia had the station wagon loaded up with the kids and their belongings. They came straight to Albuquerque that night, right off the plane. He couldn't wait to get back home. He loved New Mexico. That's where he raised his family. That's where he felt comfortable, and he spent. That's where he made his home. That's why I say he was a great New Mexico that loved the city, loved the state.
We did. We watched anything that had to do with Don Perkins, and it was special to us because we knew him and his family personally.
Yeah.
And I still have a relationship with his 4 children. And so, working together on this project with them, we've put the 4 children on the team to help make the selection because he was so important to us as a personal family friend and not just as a newscaster or a sports player or a football player, but he was a friend to our family.
Yeah, man, I can go forever. He was a joker. We would go. I remember one time we went to an Isotopes game in the afternoon. A bright sunny day, and of course we went to the game, and Don brought out the newspaper. The game was going on. He's reading the newspaper. I mean, he had a nice, beautiful day, and as parents recognized Don, they would send their kids to
Right.
meet him, and he'd be there, and the kids kind of sheepishly would, Mr. Perkins, would you sign our cap? Oh, of course, Don. So this happened a few times, and then later on in the game, we went to the mezzanine area there to see get a Coke or something to eat, and we're a couple of booths away, and there's 6 or 8 kids bouncing around Don and giving them their hat to sign, and I said, man, isn't that nice? Isn't that sweet? And Don is talking to the kids, and he's pointing to me. He's pointing to me. The kids are looking at me. They're looking at him. I said, oh man, what is that? So after 6 or 8 kids get their hats signed, they all come running up to me, start bouncing around. They said, Mr. Perkins said you'd sign our hat, Mr. Staubach. Okay, Don. All right, man. I got you. I mean, that's the type of guy Don. He was very, very serious, very cerebral-looking guy. The way he spoke, but he was a jokester. He was a jokester. He was a yeah. Mr. Perkins said you'd sign our caps, Mr. Staubach.
I think because Don lived through the segregation era and that kind of thing, and he went through so many things being a professional player and still not being respected as being a black man. I think because he had those personal experiences with it, it really helped to propel him to make sure that other people were not mistreated. Like some of the mistreatment that he had coming up. And so he had such a passion to make sure that everybody was properly treated. And if he felt like somebody was not being treated properly, he wanted to be on the inside to make sure he had a voice. And I think that's what's crucial that we still have to do today. Even though, we've had civil rights and those kind of things, we still need to make sure not only are we at the table, but we have a voice and we use our voice. Like Don used his voice to make sure that there is a level playing field and that people are treated properly. And that's what the chamber is doing. We try to advocate for people that are underserved and they don't have a voice, to give them the resources that they need in order for them to be successful.
As I say, football does not define him. That's just one part of it. I mean, there was even some discussion with the family whether, if we do this statue, whether we would have him in a football jersey uniform. I said, well, if we don't do a uniform, I mean, the nation, the NFL folks remember Don as a Ring of Honor All-Pro Dallas Cowboy. And furthermore, we had Richard Meltzer that wrote the biography of Don. Got a very nice, well-researched biography. I think it's still available on Amazon.
I did see it online.
Very well written. And Meltzer is saying, why can't we do an endowment, a scholarship endowment, in Don's name? And what I'm thinking in relation to that, if we do a nice large sculpture of Don facing Zimmerman Field, where he worked out at, where he lived, where he matriculated, shall we say, if the sculpture could do a nice maquette, we could sell that maquette nationwide and develop some funding for this endowment. Plus, I'd love to have one myself, a nice maquette. I don't know, what are they, 16 inches tall or so, if that's possible. But that's one thing.
Part of that process,
But even when we get the full-size statue, what I would hope somewhere along there we would have the quote of the greatest ever played, Jim Brown, stating that Don Perkins had more heart than anyone in the NFL. So hopefully, well, I mean, this is still in the works. We're still exploring, massaging, manipulating. But I think, again, I think it's all well overdue and more than well earned.
Yes.
I think the thing that I love so much about him growing up, that when he came back to Albuquerque after the season was over, he was Uncle Don to us. He was not this famous football player. He was down to earth. He was accommodating. We would go out on the lake and go water skiing. He was the one with the boat and all of those things. And so we would do all of those things and just had a wonderful time. So he was a person. He wasn't, so many people that achieve a certain level of status, they become standoffish. And that was never him. He was always approachable and accommodating. And he showed us that you can reach a platform and still be a true, genuine, down-to-earth, humble person.
Again, very humble individual, very articulate individual, very accomplished individual, very down-to-earth individual. Whatever you needed, Don was there to help you. I mean, he spent time at my house. I spent time at his house here on by the university area, and just you'd never know that he was as accomplished. It's not something he dwelled on. It's just something he did at that time. But he had a varied career till the very end. And not one aspect defined him. He was just a great guy, a great human being, a great, as I say, a great Lobo, a great Dallas Cowboy, but even greater New Mexican. He loved it here. Well, that's why I'm hoping with Bob's efforts we can recognize him for future generations that could say, hey, I aspire to those values, to those goals, to those accomplishments. That's what I would like to be, hopefully, as I say, for future generations.
I hope that it can be a place, a person to whom people can look, that Albuquerque is a place for everyone, and that it's a place of opportunity, that it is a place where no matter what your stature is, you can walk the streets of Albuquerque and say hello to people, or as Nick said, you can go to an Isotopes game and read the newspaper and sign autographs for kids. But, and just that communication among people, I think, he was good at that. And I think, he was good at that in his role at APD, and he was good at that in his role just as a human being. And the more we talk, the more the barriers are broken down. All of that is stuff that Don Perkins did. And if we can keep that as part of our legacy, the Don Perkins legacy, I think that would be a significant contribution for the future of Albuquerque.
Wow, thank you.
Great.